Welcome, everyone. This is a special video broadcast as part of our Living in Oneness Summit. It's great to be with you. I'm Steve Farrell, the Worldwide Executive Director for Humanities Team, and we've got an important program that's in store for you today. I'm here with my special guests, Dr. Bernie Siegel and Dr. Nauman Nameen. We're going to talk about the challenges of depression and suicide and the natural processes that we can engage to heal. You may be familiar with the opioid epidemic, the recent suicide transition of Anthony Bourdain and Katie Spady. These caught our attention. We decided to create this program in response. You may know that the suicide rate in the United States increased 24% between 1999 and 2014, and it hasn't plateaued. There's been some discussion about suicide prevention, but there's only been little discussion about the root cause. What is causing depression and suicide? Why is it steadily increasing? And what can be done about it? I want to thank Dr. Siegel, Dr. Naeem for being here to discuss these things today. They've given me permission to use their first names, so I'll transition over to their first names when I introduce them here in just a moment. A quick introduction to Humanities Team as we get started. In Humanities Team, we see that there is only one presence, the divine. That we're all emanations of the divine. It's true for each of us in all of life. Doesn't matter how far our lives may be from reflecting this truth, it's still true. Our invitation is to live in communion with the divine and to be an authentic expression of the presence, peace, and power that are our true essence. We don't need to be perfect or even excellent. We're invited to simply receive God's love and be an expression of that, each in our own way, to the best of our ability. In this way, we add to the light in the world and create processes to protect and nurture humanity and life. We can be intentional about this, so we live this way each day. And of course, when we do this together, we create the world that we know is ours. Okay, let's begin here by introducing our special guests. I'm going to read a brief introduction for each of them now. Bernie Siegel, MD, is a retired general pediatric surgeon who is now involved in humanizing medical care and medical education. In 1978, he originated Exceptional Cancer Patients, ECAP, a specific form of individual and group therapy. He is the author of Love, Medicine, and Miracles, Peace, Love, and Healing, How to Live Between Office Visits, Prescriptions for Living, and Help Me to Heal with Yosef August. Bernie and his wife, Bobby, live in Connecticut and have 5 children and 8 grandchildren. Bernie embraces a philosophy of living and dying that stands at the forefront of the ethical and spiritual issues our society and medical care grapple with today. You can find his website at ecap-online.org. Welcome to the program, Bernie. It's great to have you with us today.
Hi, let me mention my website is berniesiegelmd.com, and there's much more there that people, can find. I mean, one of the things I would jump on immediately is you talked about perfect. And from one of my visits to heaven, where I'm on the board of directors, I said to God, why not a perfect world? Why to have, as a pediatric surgeon, why watch all these kids suffer? He said, Bernie, a perfect world is not creation. It's a magic trick. You're here to live and learn. And people have to learn that. Perfection would make this meaningless. I mean, if every day were perfect, what the hell are you going to do all day? No weather forecasts, nothing. Everything's the same. And we're here to live and learn. But another biblical line, he who seeks to save his life will lose it. He who's willing to lose his life will save it. Now, what are they talking about? You give up your life when you do what others want for you. I don't make up stories. These are all people. I'm going to be a violinist. No, we want our son to be a lawyer. When he developed cancer and was told he's going to die, he started playing his violin, got a job in an orchestra, and didn't die. And that's what people have to learn. Don't lose your life because somebody else takes it away from you. I mean, I grew up with parents when I would say, what should I do? Do what makes you happy. I got a big problem. Yes, God is redirecting you. Something good will come of this. And money, because my father's father died of tuberculosis, leaving 6 kids and a wife with nothing. But my father said it was one of the best things that happened to me And I said, what are you talking about? You went through hell. He said, yeah, but it taught me what's important about life. He was an incredible man. I mean, if you don't mind, it's hard for me not to tell a story. I broke a neighbor's toy. I'll make it short because I was jealous of what he had. My father went the next day when I went to work. He bought one of these toys, brought it home, handed it to me, and said, I know you wanted this. And he walked in the house. Now, I could have kept it, but I also knew my head would explode if I did. I mean, the pressure he put on me by doing that. So I gave it, you know, to the kid and his parents, and they were very happy that I, you know, gave him his toy back. But that's the kind of person he was. And, you know, when you know you're here to contribute something and give love to the world, then ending your life is not what you think about. You think about, how do I begin my life? How do I give birth to myself? And that's part of what I learned in the support groups. When people knew they had a few months to live, they started doing what felt right. And I'm talking about people with, you know, multimillionaires who, oh, I got a few months to live. I'm going to buy a house on the ocean in Miami and listen to your meditation and, you know, enjoy myself. Oh, and I canceled the dress code at work. I don't wear a tie ever anymore. After one day when I was with him, I said, how come you dress like that? We're, you know, giving a lecture, you're going to introduce me. He said, Bernie, I canceled the dress code at work. What difference does it make what I'm wearing if I'm going to be dead in 2 months? And he lived for 5.5 years. And last but not least, a fellow who moved to Colorado to die, and I didn't get invited to the funeral. So I called the family to tell them I was very upset with them for not calling me, because I told them I wanted to come. And of course, he answered the phone. And he said, it was so beautiful here, I forgot to die. Because he said, I want to die in the mountains where it's so beautiful. And, you know, it's, again, it's hard for me to think of suicide. For me, it's rather go out and have some fun. Well, think about this, how you would answer it. You have 15 minutes to live, what would you do? Now, most people, oh, I'd call my family. I say, look, I don't want to be on the phone the last 15 minutes of my life. And one of our kids was in the audience, you know, this support group. And he said, I would buy a quart of chocolate ice cream and eat it. And that was, I thought, the best way of saying it. What's your chocolate ice cream? Instead of ending your life, go get some chocolate ice cream. And if people live their chocolate ice cream, that's when they're saving their life. You lose your life pleasing others, so you eliminate what's killing you and you save your life. You don't literally take your life, you eliminate what's killing you. And one last simple message is, when people are depressed, when they have a disease, I say, what are you experiencing? Failure, pressure. To the woman with failure, I said, how does it fit your life? Well, my body failed. I said, that's not my question. How does it fit your life? Oh, my parents committed suicide when I was a child, so I must have been a failure as a child. And then she started living. And a woman who's about to be admitted to the hospital with severe pain due to migraines, I did a meditation with her and talked about what it felt like, and she used the word pressure. And so I did more to alleviate the pressure in her life, because she wasn't my patient. I was simply trying to help her. So I didn't want to intrude by saying, what's the pressure in your life? But I blended it into the meditation. And then I left her. Nurse came over to me about 15 minutes later. She said, oh, her headache's gone. It's her marriage. She's going home now to work on that. Now, she went from having, you know, being admitted to the hospital to going home to straighten out her life. So I think if people use this, call it a labor pain. That's what a lot of people end up writing poems about, you know, all the troubles they went through. But if they give birth to themselves, then it's all worthwhile.
Beautiful. Boy, thank you for those opening comments here, Bernie. And I'm going to give I'm going to introduce our next guest here, Nauman Nameen. And Nauman, after I introduce you, please come in likewise with
Sure.
your opening remarks. Bernie, thank you. That set the table well here as we start into this discussion. Dr. Nauman Nameen is a pulmonary and critical care specialist who has been interested in human behavior and how to achieve our highest potential since his adolescent years. His intellectual curiosity and drive motivated him to become a pulmonary and critical care physician. During the course of his career, which has spanned 2 countries and is involved caring for tens of thousands of chronically and critically ill patients, he noticed that the majority of patients do not heal and remain trapped in the paradigm of chronic disease. This motivated him to dive deeper into the root of true healing through studying ancient healing traditions, the psychology of healing, consciousness, and metaphysics, which culminated in the writing of his book, Healing from the Inside Out. He continues his medical practice in Ontario, Canada, with the goal of bridging conventional medicine with a more holistic, multi-dimensional approach to healing. And Nauman, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Steve, for that introduction, and thank you, Bernie, as well, for your comments starting out. This is a very timely topic, and I would say that there is nobody I know who does not know someone, either within their family or friends or peers, that doesn't suffer from some sort of depression. And almost everybody has heard of someone who has attempted suicide or has committed suicide. And I think the question we need to ask ourselves is, what is happening? What is happening in our world, in our society? And you quoted some statistics saying the suicide rate has gone up and it hasn't plateaued. And we have to ask ourselves why. And this is a question that's not being asked. And I've devoted my last decade to this, answering the questions really around holistic healing, in general, as applied to all chronic disease. But depression and suicide is something that, I've always felt that we are not getting to the root of the problem. And I feel that the root of these problems lies in a loss of identity and not knowing who we truly are. We have a dual nature. And what I mean by that is we live in 2 worlds. We have a foot in the absolute and a foot in the relative. Now, what do I mean by that? Without getting too esoteric, what I'm saying is that our relative self is that self that has the physical body, our thoughts, our emotions, and all those things that we experience in our daily life, in our life story. And then there is that absolute, which is our true essence, which is who we truly are, which I would like to use the word consciousness. Some people may use being, some people may use soul or spirit. And if you do not have a foot in both of these worlds, if you're just in the relative, meaning you're so embroiled in the physical and in all your thoughts. I mean, and studies show that majority of our thoughts are negative. And you're lamenting over the past, because none of us goes through life without challenges and difficulties and traumas, whether they be major or minor. We all experience those right from the time of birth. And the thing is that those emotions come along with that. And often we are trying to repress and suppress those negative emotions because they're too painful to bear. But what we fail to realize is that if we suppress those emotions over time, that's going to lead to suffering. And I think all the things that we're dealing with, you mentioned the opioid crisis and the crisis of depression and suicide. I believe it's rooted in several things. Number one, not knowing who we truly are. Number two, repressing and suppressing those emotions that we are meant to feel. The whole spectrum of human emotion we're meant to experience. It's not there for us to repress, because that is an aspect of our life, an important aspect, not just the positive, but the negative. And that's why we live in the relative world, to experience everything. And it's also rooted in, like Bernie said, a lack of meaning, a lack of purpose, not knowing why we're here. Because too often I see a lot of people just living day by day, the drudgery of daily life, without a greater calling, a higher mission, without knowing why they're truly here. They're just going day by day. They see themselves as an isolated fragment in a hostile universe. But that's not why we're here. I mean, could you imagine if, and something from my book is that if everybody were to ask themselves, everybody on the planet were to ask themselves, okay, why am I here? what is my greater calling? What are my strengths? What are my talents? What are my gifts? What have my challenges, my wounds that I've suffered, the traumas that I've suffered, what are they trying to teach me? What are they trying to show me? If everybody, even if only 10% of the people on the planet could ask themselves these questions, journal on those questions, and pursue those questions in action, what a different world we would live in. What a different world we would live in. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll let you, Steve, take it where you like.
Yeah, boy, well, thank you both for really setting the table well here. And there's so much that you covered.
Can I bounce back, to respond to him?
Yeah,
Yes.
Sure. Please, Bernie.
All right, because I was making some notes. One is a book, papers I found spiritual and that I'm trying to write now, because I thought about it this way. You buy a refrigerator, you get a little booklet with it that tells you how to take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
You give birth to a child, nobody hands you a booklet. And we need a life manual, so that we are trained, not classes on how to deliver, but how to take care of a child and help it develop. The other, I often say to people, how would you introduce yourself to God? Because if you want to get into heaven on the admission line, you're asked that when you get to the head of the line. And if you say, I'm a doctor, they say, come back when you know who you are. I'm a mother of 9, come back when you know who you are. But when you say, hey, your kid is here, I'm God. Oh, the best answer I had was, this was from a teenager. He said, tell God his replacement is here. But now that kid, I know he's parented correctly to come up with a statement like that, And that's what we need to do, is identify ourselves with the divine. And I've had men in my office say, there's no point in living, I can't work anymore. And then there are women who all outlive the men, we know that, with the same diseases, who say, I can't die till they're all married and out of the house. I kept one woman alive because she had 12 cats. And I told her family, don't you dare get rid of them, clean the house, and tell your mother nobody wants them. And she went on living because she couldn't die. Ernest Holmes and Science of Mind, Carl Jung, these are people who are my teachers. I shaved my head in the 70s, embarrassed the whole family. I learned from Jung. What do monks do? They shave their head. It's an uncovering of spirituality. And I knew if I'd been in therapy, I wouldn't have had to shave my head. I would have gone on uncovering what you're not taught how to uncover in medicine. Because one of the things, again, you talk about depression. This is a medical ad in a journal. I was depressed. I went to see my doctor. He gave me an antidepressant. I feel better now. I wrote to the drug company. I said, excuse me, don't you think the doctor should have said, tell me what's happening in your life? Why are you feeling this way? Put that line in. They never answered me. Mm-hmm. The American College of Surgeons, of which I'm a member, I will deal with my patients as I would wish to be dealt with if I were in the patient's position. I said, will you do me a favor? Say I will care for my patients, because they never answered me either. But, that's a part of, again, if somebody comes in and says I'm depressed, I had this on my telephone years ago. Do you have Jack Kevorkian's phone number? I want to be dead. My father's sexually abusing me, and I have a brain tumor. Well, she's alive today because I called her up and said, I'll be your father. You're a child of God. And I always say you get a Father's Day card from Becky before I get it from our biological children, because we're so close. Relationships is something that is so important to bring into families. You can keep people alive with pets, all these, and we've got to help people develop relationships with each other. What else? And becoming a love warrior. I made up that term, and again, this is somebody depressed with cancer who said to me, you're nuts. I said, what are you talking about? Tell everybody I love you. She said, my parents are alcoholics, abusive. I tell them I love you. Nothing happens. I said, just say it every day to them.
Mhm.
3 months later, she came in with a big smile on her face. I said, what's going on? I was late for work today, so I ran out of the house. My parents were in the street screaming, you forgot something. I said, what did I forget? I have everything. You didn't say I love you today. And she said, we stood there crying and hugging each other in the street. And I've learned that. When people drive you nuts, say, I love you. I mean, I love doing it because I know it's going to drive them nuts. And I mean it very simply. I always say, I take a parking space and somebody I didn't know was waiting for it and they start screaming at me. I say, I love you. And they always drive away. They stop yelling. Yeah, but it's just a weapon. And, you know, instead of using the gun, use the love. You don't have to drive a car into a crowd. You could just say, I love you to people.
Yeah, absolutely. Text it, or better yet, call or tell somebody in person.
Yeah.
So, boy, this is wonderful, because what we're getting to here is identification. You know, you're both really this whole, who are we? And
But
also,
I think that, I mean, let me just say, I keep summarizing this. Parenting is the biggest public health issue on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
If every kid grew up loved, we wouldn't have these problems.
yeah,
Even, what's her name? The prime minister in Israel years ago, Golda Meir. I mean, her comment was, if the Arabs loved their children more than they hate the Jews, we wouldn't have a problem, you know? But it's true both ways. If we're all caring about our children, we stop fighting with each other because we want the kids to grow up with peace and love and healing.
Steve, if I could, can I respond to Bernie's comments? Is that okay?
yeah, you bet.
So,
Yeah,
so regarding love, what I want to say is this. I just want to give, you know, we're talking about stories. As an intensivist, I see a lot of young patients who end up in the intensive care unit after an overdose. And some of them are just, they think they're having a good time. They're abusing their drugs, and other people are actually suicide attempts. So, you know, a lot of them recover, you know, they get the drugs wear off, they get off mechanical ventilation, and they become awake and alert. So I ask these patients, and when I talk to these patients, when they're fully conscious, I say, I want you to say something. And they say, well, what? And I say, I want you to say to yourself, I want you to say, I love myself. Okay. So when I tell them that, they can't say it. They have a hard time saying, I love myself. So what that tells me, and then they can't give me a reason why, what that tells me is that what has gotten them to that point is that they have become so identified with their stories, their traumas, their challenges, their thoughts, and those negative emotions that they've tried to suppress, that those have obscured the truth of who they are, in essence, their consciousness, their being, their essential nature, which is unconditional love. And that's why they can't say, I love myself. So I think an important aspect of love is that learning to love yourself, seeing that, you know, we are not our life stories. Our life story is something that we experience. There is nobody on this planet that doesn't have challenges, that doesn't face difficulties and traumas. But like Bernie said, I mean, this is why we're here. Those challenges are there to teach us, to show us the way, to show us the next step in the evolution of our journey. So it's important to teach. I don't know if it's something that can be taught or uncovered, but to show people to love themselves, because once you can love yourself, you are free to love others unconditionally. So
yeah.
Yes.
Boy.
I have to keep going, because I'm talking about, you know, just what he's saying, suicidal people. One is, on a simple level, I tell people, get your baby pictures out, put them where you live and work, and love yourself every time you walk by the picture. And love your body as well, because it's not just yourself, but you don't want to look in the mirror and say, I hate my body. I play gospel songs in my car, so I have therapy all the time. But one of them is, who am I? I mean, to really help people say, you know, just as how you introduce yourself to God, who am I? And that you are of the divine. And last but not least, on a very practical level, just what you were saying. This is someone, alcoholic parents who committed suicide and told all their children to kill themselves. She didn't do it right. And they were so furious at her when she tried to commit suicide and didn't. And she's the only one alive. When I said, bring me a picture of yourself as a baby, show you your love. I don't have any. My parents are real estate agents. I can show you the house. But this is a quote from her, because I learned from Helen Keller, deafness is darker by far than blindness. So when somebody comes in like that, I don't give her instructions. I sit there and listen to her scream and yell for an hour or more. And she got it out of herself. And this is from her letter one day. I had no control over the parents who raised me or the experiences I was exposed to. But when I let love into my prison, it changed every negative item in it, meaning the experiences in my life, and turned them into something meaningful. And she developed scleroderma, which I thought was just like her life, hard skin. Mm-hmm. And I found that too, that the people who don't express the anger, your body ends up often with an autoimmune disease and you're attacking yourself. But she outlived every doctor. They didn't know what to do with her. She went on for at least 30 years or more before she died not too long ago. But it was the love. She taught me a hell of a lot. When you let love into your prison. Yeah. And Jesus was her friend and with her. And I think that's the part that I've learned too. And I spend some time every day letting God in and, working on my life and my body and trying to live the sermon. Let's put it that way, that if we all try to do that. Yeah.
These universal Christian principles, which doesn't have to get into denomination, but just on the level of universal Christian principles, where we're talking love, ourselves and others. It's beautiful. And so maybe we can talk a little more about that, because you all are going into personal stories like this. But the other thing I wanted to bring in, which I shared with you before the program as we were talking personally, that for me, back in the 90s, I read Conversations with God, and I really got then what sacred text says, in the Old Testament, where it says you're made in the likeness and image of God. That kind of went in one ear and out the other. It didn't really mean anything to me. But then when I read it down at the level of what Conversations with God shares with, you were really, it's the Hercules story for each of us. In fact, Disney had this beautiful little clip that maybe you've seen, because it's in a lot of movies, where Hercules walks into the temple of Zeus and he's mad because he's got all these supernatural skills. He doesn't know who he is. He doesn't know why he's here. And he walks into the temple of Zeus and this big stone. Zeus, he says, "Why am I here?" And he's just mad and yelling out. And the stone comes alive and the hand reaches down and it picks him up and it brings him up close to his face. And he says, "Because you're my son. Why'd you think you were here?" And I've always, as I watched that little video clip, I've always thought, God, I wish every child born into this world could have that experience and feel, the depth of the truth of that. Because you're my daughter, you're my son. Why did you think you were here?
Right. The hard part is we have 5 children. And I'm laughing because we had 3 sons. I asked my wife to try again, so we'll have a daughter. And she learned she was going to have twins and said, if it's 2 more boys, I'm not coming home from the hospital. But one was a girl. But one of the twins came to me one day and said, "You don't love me as much as all my siblings." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "You have 5 children, which you each get 20% of your time. I don't." I said, "Your brother is driving us out of our mind, so he gets 30 or 40%. But I thought it was so interesting. Thank God he had the courage. You see, you talk about the suicide. He's in the last bedroom at the end of the hall. Why? Because I don't worry if the door's shut, what he's doing, see? But his brother is in a room right off the kitchen, so we know what he's doing every minute of the day. And if he didn't speak up, he could just go on into depression. Nobody loves me. Look where they put me. They don't give me any time, and say, what's the point of living? But, the attention we get can be like the one who drove us nuts. I took him to a psychiatrist who said, "Don't worry about your son." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "He sits here for an hour, doesn't say anything at all to me." Not many people have courage to do that. But he also writes an obscene message on the velveteen sofa. He said, "Nobody's ever done that to me." He said, "Don't worry about him." And he saved me a lot of money. And that kid, years later, I mean, as an adult now, sent us an email a couple of years ago saying, "I want you and Mom to know that I love you and I thank you for all the love you gave me. And I'm sending this now because if something happened to me and I died, I would feel terrible that I hadn't taken the time to say it to you." And he's an enormous help now and a very, different child. But when you're a parent, you also need an education too, and you begin to realize the bullies, the troublemakers are all getting attention. There's some families who would come into my office where the only person who didn't look sick was the one with the illness. And I called it Siegel sign. And I would say to the family, she's using her illness to control all of you, waking them up at night when they hired a nurse who had dozed off. So she walks past the nurse and wakes her sister up. And I said, don't let the disease be what gets her attention. Because oftentimes I would prove it by saying, all right, next time you come in, I'll have a treatment for you and you'll be fine. And then they'd never show up, and I did it so the family would see she'd refuse to come back because I guaranteed to solve her problem. And then it's like, well, if he solves my problem, nobody loves me. How am I going to get attention? And it's trying to show them all that there are a lot of ways of getting the love, and asking for the love too.
Just along those lines, I just wanted to add a few points. We talked about, giving love. We're talking about parenting and when we're child, when a baby is born, when you look into the eyes of a newborn, all you see is pure love and light. That is all there is. Anyone who's had children knows that. Now, the thing is, as that child grows up in this world, you're exposed to all these other influences. Some of them may be, some of the negative influences may be when in the home, they may be at school, they may be out in society. So the child, as they grow older, starts to lose sight of that pure nature of love and light. The point I'm trying to make is this, is that imagine if one of the most important things that a child was taught when they first entered school in kindergarten was self-love. Should that not be the first thing that a child is taught, is how to cultivate self-love? Because when you catch them early at that age and you ingrain in them practices and you tell them that, they're beautiful, they're to be loved, they're pure light, that is something that will stay with them for a lifetime, especially if it's reinforced on a regular basis. It shouldn't just be in the kindergarten. It should be something that is part of the curriculum in every single stage of our education, of our child's education. Even in high school, why should it stop when they get to high school? That's when things get difficult. That's when you're going through puberty, you're trying to fit in, you have all these peer pressure, and you have social media these days, you have all the, you're being pulled in every single direction. Your parents want you to do well in school, your friends want you to go out, you're trying to do well on your sports team, you're thinking of your future, you think of your career. All those things are important, but the most important thing is cultivating that self-love and knowing how to do it when there's no one around you who can tell you that they love you, that you are to be loved. Imagine the world we would create for future generations if the most important thing we taught children was how to love themselves.
Absolutely. 100%.
Your next book, Nauman.
The other thing I've learned is that when you have that self-love, self-esteem, I'm a character. Simple terms. If I call the Chinese restaurant, I order a pizza, and they immediately say, "Is this Dr. Siegel?" I say, yeah, because they know, that that's me and my crazy sense of humor. But I got that permission from my parents. It's okay to be silly. It's okay to have some fun. And it gets me in trouble sometimes because I forget other people didn't grow up that way. They don't think what you're saying is funny when I think I'm, doing something funny. And one true story again, it's not just parents. It's, you were talking about school. It's all the authority figures. That's why I say, whether it's a politician or your president or your school teacher who says, I love you. And in first grade, and this woman wrote a little book about it called Purple. She drew a picture because the teacher told everybody to draw a picture. And the teacher came to her desk and said, "Tents aren't purple. That's a spiritual color for people who are dead. I'm not putting your picture on the wall." Second grade, Mr. Barda says, "We're all going to draw pictures now." She left her paper blank. And what do you think he does when he comes to her? Because he's walking around the room looking at the drawings. She said he put his hand on my shoulder and said, "The snowfall, how clean and white and beautiful." He saved her life. I mean, when she's in her 50s, she's writing this as a little book, child book story. It's incredible, the power that the authority figure has if they just let you know you're loved. Yeah, I read stories to kids in school, grade school. And it broke my heart one day when one little boy walked over to me and said, "Will you be my father?" It's like, oh, God. I don't know what he's going through at home. But, I mean, just what a gift for him to say it to me, because he could feel that I'm, bringing love. And I would go in with our pets, too. Because that's another thing that lets them know they're loved. These are kids sitting there and they say, "I used to be afraid of dogs, but not anymore because he sat in my lap." And it seems, and I mean this too, the dogs intuitively know which kids aren't loved. It changes our chemistry. So they would walk over and sit down next to the kids who felt empty. And I've seen it in our cancer group too. We had one dog who would tell me who's doing well and who isn't. He'd walk around the room, and just go to some people to give them something. And to others, he'd go over and say, "You're okay, pet me." He would ask for something. But that is there, and it's part of our consciousness.
Yeah, beautiful. Boy, and they are pure spirit, our pets, huh? Amazing. They have those, we use the term supernatural, but actually everything is supernatural. We got in touch with.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So you all, as you're distilling things down, what I'm hearing you say, I think is one, know who we are, children of God, and two, express love for ourselves and others. So as we, in this big topic we opened up with, my God, we got this horrible opiate epidemic. We've got, the suicide of people who would be perceived as having everything, that won the, American dream, or Anthony Bourdain and Katie Spady as examples. And I'll bring in one other example. We have an initiative called the Conscious Business Initiative, where we're bringing this kind of spirit into business. And one of the leaders coming through the program right now is from Norway. And the United Nations says Norway's kind of near the top of the heap, really doing well. But this person shared, no, but business in Norway is no different than business anywhere. It's horrible, the kinds of expressions that go on, because at the end of the day, it's really about pulling for that extra inch of profit. And the dysfunction was so massive that she finally left business altogether in Norway. So not to open this up into a conscious business discussion, but it's just this whole Darwin survival of the fittest thing, which might be one way of framing this problem here.
It's again, it's not finances, it's relationships. In Montana, they have a better survival rate for cancer treatment than in New York. Why? And this I can tell you, if your car breaks down in New York, because it's happened to me, a car full of kids, the cops yelled, "We'll send somebody." In Montana and in middle of nowhere in Texas, I've been invited to dinner while the brother-in-law fixes my car, and that's the part. Again, it's people, relationships. When somebody you know is taking care of you, it's not detached concern. It's real care. I've hugged everybody, all my patients, and they would hug me too, knowing I got my problems. And those things are so meaningful. And if we could see life as a labor pain, see, instead of numbing the pain, why don't you ask, what am I to give birth to?
Right.
And one woman compared 9 months of chemotherapy, 9 months of, her labor, her childbirth to 12 months of chemotherapy and radiation. And I won't recite the whole poem, but in the end, 9 months pass, I give birth to my child, all the discomfort and pain is now justified. 12 months chemotherapy, radiation. I gave birth to myself, see? And one woman's letter, cancer made me take a look at myself and I like who I met. But, when you're not willing to face the difficulties, I'll take a pill, I'll commit suicide, I'll end my life. And humor has to be a part of it too. It's not just love your life. I was a police surgeon in New Haven. Phone rings in the office. Dr. Siegel, yes, Jimmy. So this was a policeman who had been a football player, professional, and I knew him, had taken care of him. I'm committing suicide. Now, what the hell am I supposed to do? I'm sitting in my office. I don't know where he lives, So what do I say? I said, Jimmy, you commit suicide, I'll never talk to you again. And I hung up the phone. What happens? 15 minutes later, who comes crashing through the door? This 200, plus pound football player. And I thought he was going to throw me out the window because he's screaming, you insensitive, meaningless idiot. I got a gun in my mouth. I'm going to shoot kill myself, blow my brains out. And you say something so stupid. Because I knew he was looking for love, somebody to care for him. But I said, Jimmy, did you notice something? What? You're not dead. And then he looked at me like, oh, you smart. You did it on purpose. Yeah. And we became lifetime friends, let me tell you. But again, I knew, that just saying, I love you, everything, oh, you're so nice. I gave it to him in another way. And then we bonded and he had his new father, who cared about him. But I think we have to remember, humor can work too. And I've had phone calls about people who are going to jump out windows and, kill themselves. And I generally come up with some ridiculous statement and they don't do it. They have a good result. But again, if we grew up with love from parents, loving ourselves, loving our bodies, you wouldn't be thinking of ending your life. You'd think of, how can I begin my life?
Right. Steve, let me ask you a question, Steve. Can you think of anybody who has not faced major challenges in their life? Can you think of anybody?
No.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So this is the thing, like often what leads us down that path to depression and addiction and that whole genre of dysfunction is that when we face challenges in all areas of our life, it could be our health, it could be our relationships, it could be our finances, it could be other areas as well. And we think that our lives are meant to be smooth. Like it's supposed to be like a nice, smooth, straight path, no forks in the road. There's supposed to be no boulders in your way, nothing in the way, just a nice, smooth path. Where do we get this notion from? If you look at our popular culture, right? If you look at the movies and the people go to watch, the books that people go to, books that people read, the shows that they watch, the biggest theme in all of our popular culture is the main character is facing a tremendous challenge, whether it's Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, or whether it's Harry Potter, or whether whoever. Look at our biggest entertainment titles. We watch it on the big screen. We read about it. We see people overcoming tremendous challenges, and they come out the other side. Now that doesn't always happen in real life, but my point is this: we entertain ourselves with these stories of tremendous challenge. But when it comes in our life, we think it shouldn't happen to us, but we need to become the hero of our own life. Everybody needs to become the hero of their own life. You know, Joseph Campbell talked about the hero's journey. Every single one of us is on a hero's journey. It doesn't matter what you have you accomplished, whether you're famous or you're not famous, or whether you're homeless, or it doesn't matter who you are. We're all on a hero's journey. And we need to teach. I talked about teaching children self-love. We need to teach children that they are the hero of their own story, and they need to embrace that hero's journey from a young age. That way, when they actually come across these challenges, which they are sure to do, there is absolutely no way it can be avoided, that they will be able to navigate those challenges with greater ease. And they will be able to glean the lessons that those challenges are meant to teach them. And they will come out on the other side stronger, wiser, and more loving and more compassionate.
Right.
Yeah, beautiful. Boy, well said.
Joseph Campbell has been one of my teachers always. And what I tell people when they're trying to save their lives is look for universal themes. Because when many people are saying the same thing, you know it works. So whether you're reading Campbell, the Bible, or some other philosopher, and he says, "Oh, I remember reading, he said that." Yeah, right, because it worked. So I say, look for repetitive themes and know it works. And one thing that Campbell taught me, only one of many things, was the still pond. See, that symbol. Well, this is just what you're talking about. Why didn't the ugly duckling, when he was thrown out of his home, commit suicide? But he doesn't walk away saying, "My mother's a son of a bitch," and I can't stand her. And off he goes. And he's on a still pond one day. Oh, look at those beautiful swans. I wish I was a swan. You are. Look down. And he becomes a swan. But if his life was turbulent, the water is not still. And Joseph Campbell uses the same theme in one of his stories, where he says a tiger dies giving birth. So the goat she's chasing raise her baby. That's the wonderful thing about animals, too. It really happens. When you see these pictures of a pig nursing a little tiger, it isn't, I got to kill this thing. It's a threat. They're there with their love. But anyway, years later, another tiger comes along and says to this tiger, "Hey, stupid, what are you doing here? You're not a goat. You're a tiger." And Joseph Campbell's sense of humor, the tiger goes, "Meh." And the other tiger says, "Here's a piece of meat. I'm a vegetarian." But finally, the tiger says, "Come with me, you dumbbell." And he takes him to what? A still pond. He says, "Look, you're a tiger. You're not a goat." And he said, Campbell said, the still pond is like meditation and yoga. You quiet your mind, and then you see the truth. But if you can't quiet your mind, that's when the pill, the drugs, something else, that quiets my mind, the alcohol, whatever it is. And what we need is, as you said, once you love yourself and your mind is quiet, then the truth comes forward.
Yeah, beautiful. Wow. Well, I know that we're giving viewers a lot to consider here. This has just been a wisdom-filled hour. I'll just come in with a little piece of this, which again, as I point say that you all are both touching on, is that our essence is love. That's what, if you're a child of God, then your essence is love. And so when we do things that are aligned with love, everything works real well, where we're sowing seeds of benefit, you could call it that, which again, are universal Christian principles, where we're sowing seeds of benefit for others and for life. Then there's this boomerang effect of just all of this health and well-being and joy and all of these things coming back to us. But this whole American dream thing, and I lived in Silicon Valley with all of, and I even was fortunate to create financial wealth because I started a few companies and things. But I was around people with a lot of financial wealth, and I noticed that really wasn't doing it at all. It was creating massive dysfunction in their homes. And so I realized that we don't want to get pointed in the direction of just sort of creating financial wealth and position power and all of this. Instead, just get in touch with our true nature and sow these seeds of benefit for others. And man, that's where we create, real wealth, not just.
So I just want to speak to that, Steve. Often people who go on to achieve great things in their life, I'm not saying this of everybody, but often, whether it's wealth, whether it's, star athletes or other fame and fortune, they're often doing it because they need, that is their pill or their antidote for their own repressed emotions, their own traumatic experiences, or whatever they've gone through in their life. They're trying to get away from that. And they often do that through achieving amazing, wonderful things. And I don't want to speculate here, but, look at Steve Jobs. I mean, what happened to Steve Jobs? I mean, I don't know his life. I don't know him personally, but he developed pancreatic cancer. And we could say that he changed technology, for the masses and what he went on to accomplish. And I've read his life story, and I know the difficulties he had growing up. So I'm just using Steve Jobs as an example. I'm not pointing fingers here, but what I'm saying is that people often go on to achieve amazing things, but they're doing that to run from something. So when you talk about the financial wealth and you're talking about Silicon Valley, often a lot of those people, they're trying to cover up something. It doesn't have to be a drug. It doesn't have to be alcohol. I mean, it could be external achievements that you use to suppress that pain. So,
right. Yeah. I mean, I guess to repeat, what I grew up with, do what makes you happy. When you're a kid, you aren't happy with that answer. I mean, you come home and ask your mother for help. What should I do? Do what makes you happy. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what to do. I had to really pay attention to my feelings. And the difficulties I've also learned. Norman Vincent Peale's mother used to say to him, Norman, if God slams one door, further down the corridor, another will be open. Mm-hmm. My mother, God is redirecting you. Something good will come of this. You think you like that answer from your mother when you're 10 years old and you had a horrible day and this is a good thing? I used to sit on my bed and talk to God. And as I say, and material things, it's not we need a bigger car and a bigger house and we want to impress the neighbors. It was what good thing could we do for the neighbors? And I would say, yeah, my impression, I'm not picking on Trump, but that his parents wanted to impress the world, with objects and what they owned and how much money they had, rather than what has our son done for the world, to help heal the world. And those are the things I think we need to understand, to put, because kids up to the age, I think it's 4, their brain wave pattern is like that of somebody who's under hypnosis. Mm-hmm. And therefore, what parents say to them in those years stays with them for a lifetime.
Right.
See? So if they felt love then, yeah, it's going to stick. It'll last. But if you grow up with all the negative stuff in those years, then it's self-destructive, like the ugly duckling kind of thing. That's what you're feeling. I forgot the name, but the book is entitled The Psychobiology of Gene Expression. So your chemistry changes your life and your body. Monday morning, see, you want to improve the world, cancel Monday. Well, then everything will happen on Tuesday. Because Monday morning, we have more strokes, suicides, and illnesses occurring, and heart attacks. And why Monday? I hate my life. I don't want to do this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And one man put it very well, and he was the owner of the Chicago Football Bears. Somebody found him in the office on Sunday and said, George, it was George Hallis, what are you doing here working on Sunday? He said, it's only work if there's someplace else you'd rather be. You see, you have that kind of view of the world, you don't have to work a day of your life.
Right.
So that'll be the last word here, because we're actually I told you this hour was going to go so fast. So, yeah. But I know, wow, we've left just an incredible value. I mean, for you all, coming from your physician backgrounds to share what you've shared, that it's about love. You know, wow. I mean, it just really, you've kind of made it so simple. It's like, how can you get lost in this? So thank you. Your website
If you want to be immortal, how many people have written, love is immortal and makes all things immortal, while hate dies every minute. And the land of the living and the land of the dead, and the bridge is love. The only survival, the only meaning.
Yeah, beautiful.
Amen.
Bernie, what are the websites again people can go to follow your work? We'll go.
Bernie Siegel, MD, SIEGEL, BernieSiegelMD.com.
And mine is NaumanNaeem.com, Nauman, then Naeem.com. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I mentioned some of the books they've written, which these are books for the library, so check them out. Thank you so much. Wow, what an incredible program, Bernie and Nauman. Awesome. Thank you. I'll come back and
feels good to talk to people who agree with you.
Yeah, it was great.
I'll come back and thank you some more, but let me just get to a couple of quick important announcements before we close the program. Humanities Team is a member of the Conscious Business Alliance. It's composed of 4 NGOs, Humanities Team based here in the US, the Club of Budapest based in Europe, the Goy Peace Foundation based in Japan, business as an agent of public benefit out of Peace Western Reserve University. Our declaration says the purpose of business is to increase economic prosperity while contributing to a healthy environment and improving human well-being. So if that might appeal to you, you can see the link on the screen that you can go to read the declaration and sign it. Also, we're going to put up our Oneness Declaration. This is Global Oneness Day was created from this declaration. It's beautiful. You can actually see a little bit here on the screen. If you go to humanitiesteam.org, you'll see, when you scroll down, you'll see a place where you can read the declaration in its fullness and sign it. It shares this timeless truth, this sacred truth, really, that we're all one with the divine, each other, and all of life. And if that appeals to you, I invite you to read that and sign it as well. Coming up here, July 27 to 29, which is just around the corner in Denver, Colorado, Neil Donald Walsh, for the first time, is doing a program Friday through Sunday, July 27 to 29. He's going to spend 23 hours with people that participate in this program. And right now, through I think Wednesday next week, there's the $297 sort of early bird special. On Wednesday, the price goes up to $347. It's still an incredible deal for the 3 days, 23 hours with Neil, where he talks about living the messages of Conversations with God. This program is focused on living in oneness, so we want to invite you to something called Community Circle. It's only $10 a month, and it's an intentional community for people all over the world who are living in oneness, where they can collaborate and connect. There's a private Facebook community and then there's a twice a month program that's on Zoom like this, where people come in, you can see each other's faces, and you talk about the challenges and successes of living in oneness. And and then you can listen to over 300 programs like this one. Some are in video, some in audio, that you can listen to anytime, anywhere with friends and family. So again, it's only $10 a month. We made it intentionally made it inexpensive so people all over the world can participate. Okay, I want to thank our team here for creating the program. You can see some of our leaders here on the screen. Dee Meyer, Marketing Director; Nanette Kennedy, Communications Director; Garth Catterall is producing this show here today; Caroline Chang, my assistant, Christine Glenn, and I guess I'll put myself in there too. So thanks to the whole team here for creating Living in Oneness Summit, this program. I'm going to come back and thank again Bernie Siegel and Nauman Nameen. Wow, what an amazing program. Thank you for sharing your wisdom here with us today on such an important topic.
Thank you, Steve, for having us. Thank you for having us. It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, our total pleasure, and hope to have you all back again soon. And Nauman was with us on March 20th, so he's clearly a close friend. We hope to stay close with him. And Bernie, wow, would love to stay in touch with you with all of your good works in the world. Thank you.
And I find what changes people are stories.
Yeah.
Not statistics, but when you tell stories, nobody fights with you over it. Yeah.
Right.
Amen. Yeah, so powerful. Yeah, and you all did a lot of incredible storytelling here today, and thanks again for that. So in closing, I just want to invite all of us to live as one. This is ultimate reality, and of course, we're each going to do this in our own way, but when we live this way, we draw in this presence, peace, and power of the divine that is our birthright. So have a great week, everybody. See some of you in Denver with Neil, I hope, on July 27th when that program launches. Thanks, and have a great summer, everybody. Talk soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.